Hello, my fellow investors. I have completely changed my mind about DHC, as it is called today, and I'm 100% sure that any company associated with RMR or the Portnoy family is 100% uninvestable. It's DHC, ALR, any other company. And I'll just read you something small that I found, just to give you an example, a glimpse of what this empire is. So here I'm going to get introduction. Commonwealth was a publicly traded real estate investment trust organized under the laws in Maryland. It was founded by Barry Portnoy and a partner in 1986. By 2009, Portnoy and his son, Adam Portnoy, occupied 2 of the 5 seats of Commonwealth Board of Trustees, while 2 of the remaining seats were held by associates of the Portnoys, who also sat on the board of the other Portnoy REITs. The Portnoy also owned and controlled a company called RMR, which Commonwealth Board hired to manage Commonwealth assets. So RMR was managing RMR's own company. So Portnoy had 2 companies. He had the Commonwealth and he had RMR. RMR was managing Commonwealth. According to a series of lawsuits later filed by Commonwealth stockholders in 2009, Commonwealth trustees allowed RMR to churn Commonwealth assets in order to generate fees to RMR. That campaign and other allegedly self-interest moves by RMR led to a sharp drop in Commonwealth's stock price. One analyst deemed Commonwealth and other Portnoy REITs to be uninvestable due to the unconstrained conflicts of interest inherent in their relationship with RMR. So, uninvestable, that's the word. Who said that? You can see over here, and this is a huge thing. Vito J. Raccanelli, whoever he is, whose Commonwealth is it anyways, Baroned, April 20, 2013. Now, here's the major thing. The Investment Company Act of 1940 was passed to mitigate conflicts of interest between managers and of investment funds and the fund shareholders. But the act does not apply to investments in real estate. This is a huge thing. A manager could have a conflict of interest with the company he's managing if it's in real estate. So this analyst said anything associated with RMR is uninvestable. Portnoy's RMR is uninvestable. And I think this statement could go back from the 1970s. I've been doing a lot of research on how this whole empire started. It's going back to the 1960s. And the first partner in crime with Barry Portnoy was someone by the name of Charles Brennick. And he had entities opening in 1968, Woodhaven Nursing Home. I put you tons of information, Bayhaven Nursing Home, and then they merged. And new companies and new mergers, and that the whole theme, how everything works since the 1960s, was this way. Barry Portnoy came up with an idea that, I don't know if it's his idea, but that's the way he was operating. He can have a company, but instead of him investing in the company as one single entity, he always opened up another entity that was managing his own entity. And he was always getting fees from his entity, from the other entity. And for 50 years, the way he's operating, he's always sucking in new losers and his new entities that he's opening up. And it's his entity. It's his company. It's his corporation. But for each one, he gets new losers to buy into his companies. But he has always his company, which is managing his other company, which got investments from shareholders, and they are paying him rent, fees. That's the way he was working since the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, for the past 50 years. I did tons of research, and the amount of information I got in the past 40, 50 years, the Portnoys, RMR, any name you want to give them, tons of names and mergers in the past 50 years, 40 years, 50 years. There's one constant theme of moral corruption, shady dealings, and a constant backstabbing of shareholders and friends. Even Charles Brennick himself, before he died, said that Barry Portnoy, in the end of his life, he realized Barry Portnoy was constantly backstabbing him, and he just never realized it. So my mistake was, when I was analyzing DHC, I was analyzing like any other company. You see a company, you check its financial status, revenues, assets, and you decide if it's a good company or a bad company. And of course, you're learning the industry just like every other company. And the mistake was that the way you need to look at any company that has to do with the RMR, with Barry Portnoy, whatever, all the associates, you have to look at it as if it's one entity, not as if it's different companies. investor looks at DHC, the way he sees it as DHC is one company, and it's just managed by a company. There isn't. You go to any company that was ever managed by RMR, you will never find some old McDonald who said, I opened up this company, I built it with my own hands, and now I became old, and I can't continue to manage it, so I came over to the Portnoys and asked me if they can manage it. No. All these entities, all these corporations, all these companies were all built up by Portnoy. Then it was Barry Portnoy. He made these companies, and he brought them full of suckers to invest by him. And then whenever things go south, he used to just backstab his investors, his stockholders, and always he was earning money. That's how he built his entire empire. So we can look at DHC and analyze it as an entity by itself, as a company by itself. You have to analyze the entire RMR company. And what's going to be with RMR, with DHC, is very, very simple. We don't even have to look at DHC to know the future of this company. The real place we have to look in understanding what's the future for DHC is ALRS, which was once 5-star. Because the way today Adam Portnoy, the RMR group, is going to work is they're not going to get rid of ALRS. This company, they're already having it already. It's a company since the 1960s. 1968 was the first time they opened up a nursing home. And they're not going to let it go. ALRS is paying fees to RMR. What they're going to do is they're going to transfer money from one of the other entities, from one of the other corporations into ALRS to keep it flowing, to keep it alive. Now, who is going to be the one to sacrifice to save ALRS? The answer is 100% DHC. And how do I know that? I'll prove it to you. This is the agreement between the transaction agreement between 5-star Senior Living and Senior Housing Properties Trust. That was DHC before they changed the name in April 2019. So let's see what was part of the transactions that they did in this agreement, and then you'll see how everything is stated out perfectly. What RMR's plan is to save ALRS. So first of all, we're talking about in the beginning of the pandemic, when there's no reason in the world. If there's no reason in the world DHC would need to be helping ALRS. Why in the world would a company which is having problems go and save another company? If ALRS has been losing money since 2012, what DHC should have done, not now, but in 2012, was kick ALRS out of anywhere and tell them we don't want you anymore, we're taking a different company to manage our senior housing. But they didn't do it. Not in 2012, 13, 14, 15. Even in the pandemic, they did it only partially. That's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Who in the world has a restaurant with a bad manager and doesn't kick the restaurant out for 10 years? No. If you have a company and it's managed by a company which isn't doing good, you kick them out and you get a new manager. But no, it's not what they did. They kept them on for years and years and years. And then finally, when things went so bad, so they made a new agreement. Now, what can we find this agreement? First of all, just a small little example of how RMR is planning to transfer assets from DHC to ALRS. So we can see over here in this agreement that here it is. Why in the world SNH credit agreement? Over here we can see in this clause that SNH and 5 are entering into the SNH credit agreement, which is secured by certain real properties owned by subsidiaries of 5, and pursuant to which SNH has agreed to make available line of credit to 5 on the terms of conditions set forth therein of up to $25 million. Why in the world should SNH, today DHC, lend $25 million to 5? Why? Why should they do that? The answer is very simple. RMR is looking to transfer assets from DHC to ALRS. The way they did it was by lending money from one corporation to another. And they can't just move money from one account to another because it's different entities. It's not legal. So the way they did it, they're just doing a loan. That's one thing. Another thing we can see over here, this is also another crazy thing. 5 and SNH did another agreement. In this agreement, DHC, which was then SNH, bought from 5 PPE for $50 million as of March 2019. Why in the world, and actually in this clause they could go up to $60 million. Why in the world should DHC buy PPE from 5-star and $50 million? Why? Why should they do it? No, the answer is because they want to transfer money. They want to transfer assets from DHC to ALRS. And they can't do that. So the way they did it, they made an agreement. DHC is going to buy PPE from Analyse Life for $50 million, and it could be up to $60 million. Do they need this PPE? I'll just check in a second. But you see, they didn't need this PPE. But another thing. This is crazy. Absolutely crazy. They added on another clause in this agreement. Here it is. That additional consideration. Besides everything, there's another additional consideration. In consideration of the share issuance, S&H will provide FIVE with $75 million of additional consideration in the following order until the full amount of the additional consideration has been provided. Why in the world should S&H, if it would have been an entity by itself, give a FIVE $75 million? Why? There's no reason. The answer is, as I said, it's just another way of transferring assets from one corporation to another corporation. It's all one big company, and RMR needs to get its fees. So it needs to keep Analyse Life living. The way it needs to do it, it just needs to transfer assets from one company to another. That's it. You can't analyze any single company of RMR or Barry Portnoy or today Adam Portnoy by itself. You have to analyze the entire thing. And because even if you let's say all of the assets of RMR would be trading at 10 cents a dollar, even then you can't touch them because it's so corrupt. And I mean morally corrupt. You can't touch anything that have to do with this company. Now, getting back to the PPE. Why in the world did DHC buy from Analyse Life $50 million worth of PPE? Did they need it? The answer is no. How do I know they didn't need it? Because we're going back over here. I went back to check every quarter from 2019. You can see over here, total senior living communities. In 2018, they had 304. In Q1, they had 304. Then 301, 286, 244. Going into the pandemic, DHC did not add on any single facility. So why would a company who's not buying more facilities need to buy another $50 million worth of PPE? That PPE isn't facilities because it didn't add on any facilities. So that PPE was furniture, it was cars, whatever it was. I don't know what it was. But it wasn't properties because it didn't add on any properties in this time. So Analyse Life didn't sell any properties or facilities to DHC. So the only thing that could be concluded in that PPE is furniture or, I don't know, computers, whatever it is. $50 million worth of furniture sold to DHC, and DHC did not need it because they weren't buying any more facilities. They're changing now all the old facilities, all the furniture. Even if we're assuming for just, let's say they didn't sell them just a cucumber for $50 million and they really sold them PPE worth $50 million. They didn't need it, so why did they buy it? And if you go to Analyse Life 10Ks, and you could see that their PPE went down at that time. But if you go to DHC's PPE, it didn't go up in a single quarter. Here we have, it went up only one quarter. A single quarter went up. We have over here, total real estate properties. In Q4 2018, 6.3 billion. The next quarter went down to 298 million. The next quarter is the only quarter it went up to 324. So maybe over here we can see there's another $26 million added on to the total real estate properties. Then it went down 5.8, 5.82, 5.85. So we don't even see the $50 million in the PPE. Where is it? If Analyse Life sold $50 million of PPE to DHC, why doesn't it show up in the balance sheet? We don't see it. Over here, it went up only in $26 million, the entire real estate properties. So it could be one of the three options. But before we get to that, I just want to say another thing. This is their thank you from DHC right after June 30. So this is the second, this is Q2. This is right after the agreement between Senior House Properties, DHC, and Analyse Life. This is the quarter right after. They did the agreement in April. And as we can see over here, besides they sold more properties. They sold here in the past, during the 6 month ended June 30, 2019, we sold 10 MOBs, whatever. They sold here altogether, they sold 13 properties for a gross sale price of $35 million, and the gain was $17 million. So besides the $50 million of PPE that they bought from FIVE, they got another $17 million from sales that they sold. Okay, so going back to the question, why don't we see the increase in the PPE? So there's three options. One option could be is that they bought PPE $50 million, and it wasn't worth $50 million. It was worth only $5, and it's a whole one big fraud. They sold them a cucumber for $50 million, and no one knows what they sold them. But even if we're not going to go to that part, we're not going to say there's any fraud. They really sold them PPE worth $50 million. What happened to that PPE? The answer could be another two options. One is that they bought the PPE, but they sold other things. They sold other properties or other PPE, and in the bottom line, the PPE didn't go up in $50 million. It went down because they sold other properties. So they sold they sold the properties for $17 million, and they got the PPE for 50. Okay, in the end, the bottom line is that the PPE went up only in $26 million instead of $50 million. Another option could be is that they bought the PPE for $50 million, and DHC went on and sold it for $10 million because it was worth only $10 million. No one needed that PPE, but they needed to transfer money to RMR wanted to transfer money from 5-star to Alaris Life, so they sold them the PPE for $50 million, and then DHC went and sold it for $10 million. So we never see any increase in the PPE because it was sold right away for a small amount of money. Now, I'm willing to bet 100% that if anyone would come over to Adam Portnoy and ask him, where is this money? What happened? Why did you buy PPE in a time where you weren't growing your business? You were selling facilities, right? From thereafter, this is the only quarter which they didn't go down. But from then on, this is Q1 of 2019. So this is in Q2. They already sold. They were down 3 facilities. The next quarter, they were down already 15 facilities, and afterwards, down almost 40 facilities. So you didn't need the PPE. Why did you buy it? I'm willing to bet that the answer for that is that they would say that the best option was to sell the PPE for DHC because that was the best thing they could do. And how do I know that's what they would say? Because that's what they did. That's what Barry Portnoy did back in 2000. I found this. This is a tax evasion that Barry and Diane Portnoy. This is Barry Portnoy versus the Commissioner of Revenue. I'm not going to read this whole thing what exactly happened then, but I'll just give you a small glimpse. Just a small glimpse. I'm not going to read everything now. Just a small little part, and you see how the way their mind works. How do they do these things? This is unbelievable. This is more corruption at the highest. I'm not saying it's illegal. This is crazy. And here it is. Okay. During the years at issue, Mr. Portnoy provided consulting service to advisor, which is his company, including raising debt and equity capital and providing advice in various businesses. In return for services, Mr. Portnoy received consulting income from advisors. Okay. Mr. Portnoy was also a director of Greenery Rehabilitation Group. Due to the change in the federal accounting rules for the sales leaseback arrangements, Greenery was forced to sell the more than 900,000 shares of stock it owned in HRPT. HRPT was Barry Portnoy's company. And Greenery, which Barry Portnoy was also the director of Greenery, they had 900,000 stocks of Barry Portnoy's HRPT. Now, Greenery explored several options, including selling its HRPT stock in the open market and a block trade through an investment bank. Both options, however, presented the possibility and likelihood that such transaction would not generate the full value for the stock because placing such a large number of shares into the market would likely decrease the per share market value. So, first of all, the way this thing is like this. Greenery had 900,000 stocks of Barry Portnoy's company, HRPT, and they needed the money, and they couldn't sell in the open market because it would take down the price. That's the way they were presenting it. Again, Greenery is a company which Barry Portnoy is a director. And they have stocks of Barry Portnoy's HRPT, and they wanted to sell it. And they couldn't sell on the stock. They're saying they couldn't sell on the stock market because the price would go down. So what did they do? Unbelievable. Based on his knowledge of HRPT, gained through his ownership and involvement and advisor and experience as a trustee of HRPT, Mr. Portnoy concluded that the 900,000 shares of HRPT should be a good investment. He discussed it with Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin was his partner in crime. He is today the president of Alaris Life. He's the cousin of Charles Brennick, who was the first partner of crime of Barry Portnoy. The possibility of the two of them purchasing the Greenery stock as an investment. Mr. Portnoy and Mr. Martin approached Greenery and proposed that they pay a portion of the price in cash with Greenery, financing the balance. And you see what they're doing? They're buying back their shares from the company which they are directing for a portion of the price in cash. So Greenery was saying they can't sell the stocks in the open market because it's going to go down. So what did they do? What did Barry Portnoy do? Barry Portnoy, he's the one who was managing everything. What he did was he told Greenery, which was he's telling himself, go sell to myself these 900,000 shares, and you're gonna lend me the money to buy my stocks. Mr. Portnoy and Mr. Martin negotiated with the 3 outside directors. Yeah, blah blah blah. They negotiated. These people, they're the puppets. All these companies are owned by Portnoy. He's directing everything. They negotiated. Yeah, blah. Who's negotiated? Mr. Portnoy and Mr. Martin were the 2 directors. So they negotiated with the 3 outside directors of Greenery to establish the price. Greenery agreed to provide 85% of the financing. You believe what's going on? Greenery sold the 900,000 stocks to Portnoy, and they lent them the money to buy themselves their own stocks. Greenery lent Barry Portnoy money so he could buy from Greenery their stocks, which they didn't sell in the open market because they said it wouldn't be worth it because it would take down the price. So they lent Portnoy money to buy back his own stocks. This is crazy. After the financial negotiation was completed, Mr. Portnoy and Mr. Martin decided to purchase the stocks in the name of advisors. Advisors, that's Barry Portnoy's company. The Greenery directors had insisted that Mr. Portnoy and Mr. Martin guarantee the note jointly and severely. Okay? What happened? And it was like this. Let's go to the end. Oh, this is crazy. In November 1989, advisors purchased 996,250 shares of HRPT stock. Advisors paid Greenery $1,374,000 in cash and executed a note in the amount of $7,780,000. You understand what's going on? Barry Portnoy told Greenery, you're going to sell me back my stock. I'm going to pay you $1.3 million, and you're going to lend me $7.7 million to buy from you your stock. And that was because Barry Portnoy said the Greenery can't sell the stock on the open market because it'll take down the price. Instead of that, they lent him the money. This is crazy. So if you come to today to the RMR and ask him why the DHC buy PPE from 5 when they didn't need it, they're going to tell you because 5 didn't have anything to do with it, and the best option we came up was to sell it to analyse. It's all crap. That's the way they work. This is a morally corrupt company going back to the 1960s and 1970s, backstabbing shareholders. The amount of legal battles that have been going in the past decades is crazy. It's unbelievable. The tip of the iceberg. I probably only saw only the tip of the iceberg, and it's absolutely crazy how morally corrupt these people are. Sorry. So getting back to the DHC, any company that has to do with Barry Portnoy then and Adam Portnoy today, RMR, is uninvestable. It's uninvestable because you can't analyze the company. The balance sheet doesn't matter. The revenue doesn't matter. Nothing matters. The only thing that you need to know is that these people can, at any given time, backstab you from any place we shouldn't even think of they could do it. They could transfer money. They can merge it. They can make a new company. They can make a new entity. Then they would move this asset from this company to another company. That's what they've been doing since 1968 or before. These people cannot be trusted because they are very, very morally corrupt people. You can't work with them. You can't invest in them. And they're finding every time a new batch of losers. That's the best way to call them. Losers who invest in them. They don't know their history. And every time they'll just find more losers, and they get more investment. They open up a new entity, and that's how they work. So I'll just conclude the way I started and what Vito J. Racanelli said back in 2009. Whose Commonwealth is it anyways? That's the answer. Who is RMR? Who is DHC? Who is ALR? Who is OPI? Who is IPLT? All these companies, there's no one. There's no person who said, I built this company and then I just gave it to Barry Portnoy or RMR to manage it. No, all these companies belong to Barry Portnoy and today to Adam Portnoy and to RMR. It's one company, it's one balance sheet, and they're just transferring through all the different kind of ways assets from here and to here. These companies, these people are uninvestable. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this video.